Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I want to finish up tonight by talking about a housing strategy that I think would actually work because, as Aled mentioned, this is actually a crisis now. And way too many people, including some current city councilors that are running for mayor, have got their heads in the sand thinking they can't do anything about it. And it's only going to get worse unless we take action and action right now. And there's lots of proof that it could work. And so therefore, number one, I think we need to cut the review and approval time by 50%. Austin, Texas has done this and has dramatically increased supply. With that increase in supply has come decreased rents and decreased condo pricing and housing pricing, and we can do it. We need to look at the whole regulatory approval process. We need to have more zoning that is consistent with what actually ends up getting approved rather than having to force everyone to go through the whole zoning process, SBA, ZBA process all over again. We need to rethink the need for dramatic red tape and regulation in our system and to have a system where it takes 3 times as long to review and approve a development as it does to actually build that development makes no sense. It just makes no sense, and we can and need to change it. We need to dramatically increase the density around major transit nodes significantly by 20 to 30% immediately. As Aled spoke, we need to solve this housing crisis at scale, and the only way to do it is by increased height. And I do think that the increased height actually has a more equitable sharing of some of the impacts of that increased density rather than this boogeyman of decreasing the height but making these buildings bigger and squatter, which means that shade and other things are impacted more by less people by a far greater degree. And I think we need to reduce development fees. And I think we need to reduce development fees for either developments below a certain dollar figure of value, 400,000 or 500,000, depending on whether it is a condominium or the equivalent from a rental value. And or, as Aled mentioned in regards to Phoenix, for areas where there is not a big infrastructure investment, we should be able to reduce, if not eliminate, the development fees versus greenfield. And one of the strange things about Mississauga is we've got some greenfield, not many, but some greenfield areas that are paying the same development fees as the infill areas that wouldn't have any real infrastructure costs associated with that. I think we need to think about increased density along major arterials the way Toronto has. I don't think 6 stories is going to be enough, and I think that needs to be looked at. And I do think that this fourplex issue is really a woke thing to get everyone mad. It's not going to have a huge amount of impact. People, when I mention my problems with the fourplex, come back to me and say, well, don't worry, it's actually not going to have a huge amount of impact. And so therefore, what ends up happening is we end up separating people into different camps. The reality is we can't have every single suburban street in Mississauga with 4 times as many people, 4 times as many cars, 4 times as many toilets, 4 times as much water. It just won't work. It doesn't make sense. And so therefore, why argue like it for crazy? In some areas where there are more housing units per acre, it makes a ton of sense, but not everywhere. And so I think it doesn't make sense. And then I think transit is the biggest and most important solution, because people that are going to be living in these towers, this higher density development, are going to need transit because they can't afford the housing plus 2 cars for sure. And a lot of times 1 car, and a lot of them, millennials, et cetera, they don't want to actually own a car because they don't use it all week long. They only use it when they want to go and socialize. And then you want them using a taxi or an Uber or something like that. And so transit is the solution. And the biggest and best solution is all day 2-way go on the Milton Mississauga line. It has an 8-to-1 benefit to cost ratio. It should have been built 20 years ago. And why it hasn't is because I don't think we've got the politicians in Mississauga that can argue, like Scarborough's argued for the Scarborough extension, or Shepherd subway that got argued, or Vaughan for the subway extension to Vaughan, or even the subway extension to Steeles and Richmond Hill. Why are they getting those extensions and expansions and we're not? It's got to be that we're not justifying it and we're not arguing for it. And if we had that kind of transit in Mississauga, development around those transit stations makes a ton of sense, would mean that people could buy a reasonably priced condominium or rent a reasonably priced apartment and not have to spend $100,000 on a parking spot and another tens of thousands of dollars on a car. That's my housing plan. And I think we need to take action today. And these people that are saying that it's bunk have got their heads in the sand. That's my show for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Good night.